The cry in the snow. Nicholas Calloway stood by his office window, a tumbler of whiskey resting in his hand. Untouched. Outside, a winter storm raged, burying the long driveway leading to his estate under thick layers of snow. The sprawling mansion, perched on the edge of a secluded hill, stood as a monument to his success, a success that had come at the cost of everything else. The world knew him as a ruthless billionaire, a man who built his empire with a mind of steel and a heart of ice. He was feared in boardrooms, envied in social circles, and utterly alone in his grand estate. It was better this way. The beeping of his security system interrupted his thoughts. Nicholas frowned and turned toward the control panel. His steel-gray eyes narrowed as he tapped the touchscreen. A live feed from the front gate flickered onto the monitor. Two small figures stood at the iron gate, barely visible in the swirling snow. Children. Nicholas stiffened. The intercom crackled to life. "Sir," Miss Wilkins, his longtime housekeeper, called from the security room. "There are two little girls at the gate. They're asking to come inside." Nicholas exhaled sharply. "Children? At this hour?" "They're freezing, sir. The storm." He turned back to the monitor, studying the scene. The girls, no older than 5 or 6, were huddled together, their matching coats covered in snow. Their small faces were red from the biting wind. One of them, slightly taller, was pressing the intercom button again and again, her little fingers trembling. Nicholas's jaw tightened. This had to be a setup, a trick. Criminals used sympathy to lower defenses. He'd seen it before. People always thought they could outsmart him. They never did. "Keep the gate locked," he ordered. "But sir, if it's real, call the police. This is not our problem." Miss Wilkins hesitated, her voice softer now. "Sir, they're just children." Nicholas turned away from the screen. "Exactly. No one leaves children in a storm like this unless they want to manipulate someone like me." A soft, crackling voice broke through the intercom. "Please, we're so cold." Nicholas gritted his teeth. He wasn't a monster, despite what people thought. But he wasn't a fool either. The second girl, the smaller one, spoke next, her voice barely above a whisper. We don't have anywhere else to go." A violent gust of wind sent the taller girl stumbling against the gate. She pressed herself against the bars, trying to shield her sister. Their pink coats barely offered any protection from the storm. Nicholas turned back to the window, his fingers drumming against the mahogany desk. He had built an empire by trusting his instincts, by seeing the lies beneath people's words. His instincts told him to walk away. Miss Wilkins's voice broke through his thoughts. "Sir, look." On the monitor, the smaller girl suddenly wavered. Her knees buckled, and then she crumpled into the snow. The taller girl screamed, "Lainey, Lainey, wake up." Nicholas's breath caught. "Damn it." Miss Wilkins was already rushing for the door, but Nicholas barked, "Wait." His eyes were glued to the screen. The conscious girl was desperately shaking her sister, her little hands frantic. The snow was already starting to pile over the collapsed child's tiny frame. Nicholas clenched his jaw. Against every instinct, against every rule he had built for himself, he grabbed his coat and stormed toward the front door. He wasn't sure why. Maybe it was because Miss Wilkins had worked for him for nearly 20 years, and her voice had held something he hadn't heard before, disappointment. Maybe it was because the image of that tiny girl collapsing into the snow was now burned into his mind. Or maybe it was something else, something buried so deep inside him that he didn't want to acknowledge it. Either way, Nicholas Calloway stepped outside. And in that moment, everything changed. Part 2. The name that shattered the past. Nicholas strode down the snow-covered driveway, his long strides eating up the distance between himself and the unconscious child. The bitter wind bit at his face, but he ignored it. Miss Wilkins had already reached the girls. She was kneeling beside the unconscious one. Lainey, her name was, checking for a pulse. She's barely breathing, she murmured. Sir, we need to get her inside. Now. Nicholas barely had time to nod before the older girl, Leah, as he gathered, gripped his sleeve. Her small hands were shaking. Please, sir, she pleaded, her big eyes staring up at him. Help her. Lonnie's all I have. Nicholas felt something unfamiliar stir in his chest. Come on, he said gruffly, scooping the unconscious girl into his arms. She was far too light. Too fragile. Inside. Now. Leah clung to Miss Wilkins as they hurried toward the house. Inside, the warmth of the grand foyer was almost suffocating compared to the freezing night. Nicholas set Lainey down on the couch, watching as Miss Wilkins wrapped thick blankets around her. Leah hovered by her sister's side, refusing to let go of her hand. Nicholas crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Who left you out there? Leah shook her head. We don't know. You don't just end up outside a billionaire's house in the middle of a snowstorm, Nicholas said flatly. Where are your parents? Leah hesitated. Then, barely above a whisper, she answered, We were looking for someone. Miss Wilkins brought a warm cloth to Lainey's forehead. Who, sweetheart? Lainey stirred beneath the blankets. Her little lips moved, forming a single word, a single name. Bella. Nicholas froze. The room seemed to tilt. Miss Wilkins looked up sharply. Mr. Calloway. Nicholas's hands clenched at his sides. His mind raced, connecting dots he didn't want to acknowledge. Bella. That name. It couldn't be a coincidence. Not after all these years. Not after everything that had happened. He looked down at the twins, these fragile, lost children who had shown up at his doorstep on the coldest night of the year. His voice, when he finally spoke, was dangerously quiet. Where is Bella? Lee and Lainey exchanged a glance, and in that silent look, Nicholas saw something that made his blood run cold. They knew. They knew exactly who Bella was, and they were hiding something. Something that would change everything. A name from the past. The warmth of the grand foyer enveloped them as Nicholas Calloway stood frozen, the name echoing in his mind like a gunshot. Bella. The air in the room grew thick with something unspoken, something heavier than the winter storm outside. Miss Wilkins knelt beside the unconscious child, wrapping her in blankets, while the older girl, Leah, he now knew, clutched her sister's tiny hand. Nicholas's fingers curled into fists at his sides. He turned to Leah, his piercing steel-gray eyes locked onto hers. What did you just say? His voice was sharp, controlled, but there was an edge to it, an undercurrent of something raw. Leah bit her lip, hesitant. Her small fingers smoothed over Lainey's damp forehead. She said Bella, she whispered. Nicholas stepped forward, the polished floor beneath his expensive leather shoes creaking slightly. He looked down at the two girls, trying to steady the storm raging in his chest. Who is Bella to you? His voice was quiet, but firm. Leah hesitated again, but Nicholas caught the flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, not of him, but of something, or someone else. She's our mom, Leah finally whispered, her voice barely audible over the crackling fire in the nearby hearth. The word slammed into Nicholas like a physical blow. For a split second, the room around him disappeared. The towering walls of his mansion, the expensive artwork, the warmth of the fire, none of it mattered. Bella, their mother. His heart pounded. His mind raced back to a time he had buried, a time he had forced himself to forget. Could it be the same Bella? No, it couldn't. It shouldn't. Miss Wilkins, sensing the change in his demeanor, spoke gently. Mr. Calloway, do you know their mother? Nicholas inhaled sharply, forcing himself to push aside the past that threatened to consume him. He needed answers. Now. Where is she? His voice was calmer now, but the edge remained. Leah looked away, her grip tightening on her sister. She's missing, she murmured. She told us if anything happened, we should find you. Nicholas felt a chill, colder than the winter outside. His gaze flickered to Miss Wilkins, whose expression had softened with worry. "You expect me to believe that your mother, a woman I haven't seen in years, sent you to my house?" His voice was controlled, but something was shifting inside him. "Out of everyone in this city, why me?" Leah hesitated, her small hands curling into fists against the blanket. "Because she said you'd help." Nicholas exhaled slowly, his hands pressing into the armrest of the couch. His mind raced through possibilities, but none of them made sense. Bella was gone. She had disappeared from his life years ago, and he had let her. But now, two small children, their hair dark like hers, their eyes wide with desperation, were sitting in his house, claiming to be her daughters. Nicholas rubbed a hand over his face, the weight of the past creeping up on him. How long has she been missing? Leah looked up at him, her lips trembling. 2 days. 2 days. That was long enough for a person to disappear for good. Something cold settled in Nicholas's chest. He needed to think, needed to figure out what was really happening. He turned to Miss Wilkins. "Get them something to eat," he ordered, his voice quieter than before, "and set up a guest room." Miss Wilkins gave him a long look before nodding. "Of course, sir." Leah hesitated as Miss Wilkins tried to lead her away, her gaze flickering back to Nicholas. "Please," she whispered, "find her." Nicholas said nothing, because for the first time in years, he wasn't sure if he could. The ghost of Bella Thompson. Nicholas sat in his study, the whiskey glass untouched beside him. The fire crackled in the grand fireplace, casting shadows against the deep mahogany walls. He stared at the security footage still pulled up on his monitor. The grainy black and white image of Leah and Laney standing at his gate was burned into his mind. They shouldn't be here. And yet they were. His fingers tapped against the armrest of his chair. His mind was at war with itself. Bella Thompson. The name alone sent memories crashing through him. He had loved her once, deeply, and then he had cast her out of his life, believing she had betrayed him. But if she had truly betrayed him, why would she send her daughters to him of all people? Nicholas reached for his phone. There was only one person who could get answers for him. "Jack," he said when the call connected. A deep voice on the other end sighed. "I knew you'd call. What do you need, Calloway?" "I need information. Now." "On who?" Nicholas hesitated for only a second before saying the name he hadn't spoken in years. "Bella Thompson." A pause. Then, Jack's voice turned serious. "You sure you want to dig into this?" Nicholas's jaw clenched. "Just find her." Jack exhaled. "Give me a few hours." The call ended. Nicholas sat there for a long moment, staring at the screen. He was playing a dangerous game, and something told him he wasn't the only one. Shadows in the storm. Hours passed. Leah and Laney had been fed, bathed, and were now asleep in the guest room under Miss Wilkins's watchful eye. Nicholas, however, hadn't moved from his study. The storm outside had calmed, leaving only the eerie silence of the snow-covered estate. Then, the security alarm beeped. Nicholas's muscles tensed. He immediately pulled up the feed, his heart thudding in his chest. A figure stood at the edge of his property. A man, dressed in dark clothing, his face obscured by the hood of his coat. Nicholas narrowed his eyes, watching as the figure stood motionless at the tree line, just past the glow of the security lights. His pulse quickened. Was it someone looking for the girls? Or something worse? The figure didn't move, didn't speak, didn't approach. They just stood there, watching. Nicholas's jaw tightened. He reached for the security system controls and activated the intercom. "Who are you?" His voice was calm, but deadly. Silence. Then, slowly, the figure turned, as if they knew Nicholas was watching. A chill crawled down Nicholas's spine. And then, just as suddenly as they had appeared, the figure melted back into the shadows of the trees. Nicholas's grip on the desk tightened. Something was wrong. And Bella Thompson was at the center of it. He was sure of it now. Whatever had happened to her, whatever had made her disappear, it wasn't by choice. And if Nicholas didn't find her soon, he had a sinking feeling that someone else would. And this time, they wouldn't leave behind any children to beg for help. A trail of secrets. Nicholas Calloway didn't sleep. The security footage of the mysterious figure at the edge of his estate replayed in his mind, over and over again. Who were they? Were they watching him? Watching the girls? Or were they waiting? A familiar voice pulled him from his thoughts. "Sir." Miss Wilkins stood at the doorway to his study, worry etching deep lines into her face. "The girls are still sleeping, but you haven't moved all night." Nicholas exhaled, pushing back from his desk. His eyes were sharp, calculating. Someone was outside last night, watching. Miss Wilkins stiffened. "What? Who?" Nicholas shook his head. "I don't know. They didn't approach, didn't say anything, but they wanted me to see them." He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration creeping into his voice. "This isn't random, Wilkins. Bella sent those girls here for a reason. And now, someone else is watching." The older woman pursed her lips, concern flickering in her eyes. "Sir, if Bella is in trouble, do you think this has something to do with why she left all those years ago?" Nicholas clenched his jaw. That was the question, wasn't it? Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. "Jack." Nicholas didn't hesitate. He answered immediately. "Tell me you found her." Jack's voice was tight. "I found something." Nicholas's stomach twisted. He grabbed his coat and headed toward the door. "I'm coming to you." "Make it quick," Jack said, "because whatever's going on, it's bigger than just Bella." Nicholas ended the call, glancing once more at the staircase leading to the guest rooms. Leah and Lainey were still asleep. They had already lost their mother. And now, whoever was watching them might try to take them too. Nicholas's grip on the doorknob tightened. Not on his watch. The last place she was seen. Jack Morrison ran a private investigation firm on the far side of town, a place where secrets went to be buried or exposed. Nicholas had used his services before, but this time it was personal. When Nicholas entered the office, Jack was already waiting, arms crossed, leaning against his desk. "You're not going to like this," he said without preamble. Nicholas didn't sit. "Tell me." Jack sighed and tossed a file onto the desk. Bella Thompson disappeared from a rundown apartment complex near the east side of town 2 nights ago. Witnesses say they heard a struggle. A man's voice. Then silence. Nicholas opened the file. The security camera stills showed a grainy image of Bella exiting the apartment. She was looking over her shoulder, rushed, nervous, afraid. Then, nothing. She vanished from the footage before reaching her car. Jack continued. "I found out she's been using fake IDs, changing her location every few months. She wasn't just in hiding, Calloway. She was running from something. Or someone." Nicholas's stomach churned. Did she know she was being followed? Jack nodded grimly. No doubt. She was being careful, covering her tracks. But 2 nights ago, something went wrong. Nicholas stared at the still images, a cold fury settling in his chest. Who was she running from? Jack hesitated. "That's the part you're not going to like." Nicholas looked up sharply. Jack exhaled. She was running from Garrett Vaughn. Nicholas's world tilted. Garrett Vaughn. A name he knew all too well. A powerful businessman. Ruthless. Dangerous. A man whose fortune was built on backroom deals and whispered threats. Nicholas had nearly done business with him once. Years ago, before realizing that Vaughn didn't just win deals. He eliminated competition. Bella knew Vaughn. Nicholas asked, his voice tight. Jack nodded. Not just knew him. She was digging into him. Hard. Nicholas clenched his fists. Why? Jack leaned forward, voice low. Because she had proof, and Vaughn wanted her dead for it. The proof that got Bella taken. Nicholas sat in Jack's office, staring at the evidence. Documents, financial records, hidden bank accounts. Bella had been investigating Vaughn for years. She had been collecting evidence, tracking his illegal operations, and Vaughn must have found out. Jack flipped to another page, the last place Bella went before she disappeared. A storage facility on the edge of town. She rented it under a fake name, paid in cash. Nicholas's mind raced. If Bella had left behind anything, any clue as to what she was working on, it would be there. He stood abruptly. I need the address. Jack hesitated. Calloway, this isn't just some business rivalry. Vaughn doesn't play fair. If he took Bella, it's because she was a threat. Nicholas's jaw tightened. She sent her daughters to me, Jack. That means she knew she wasn't coming back. She trusted me to protect them. Jack studied him for a long moment before sliding the address across the desk. Then let's hope you're not already too late. The storage unit. Nicholas pulled up to the darkened storage facility just past midnight. The storm had cleared, leaving the air bitterly cold. Jack had opted to stay behind, knowing that Nicholas wouldn't be deterred by warnings. He had to see for himself. The facility was mostly deserted. Just endless rows of metal doors and numbered units. Nicholas found Bella's under the alias she had used, Catherine Wells. The lock was already broken. His pulse quickened. Gun drawn, Nicholas pushed the door open. Inside, the air was stale. Boxes were scattered, some overturned, as if someone had gone through them in a hurry. Nicholas's eyes darted across the space. There had to be something. A clue. Anything. Then he saw it. A small teddy bear sat on top of an open box, slightly worn but clean. He recognized it instantly. It was the same one Leah had been clutching the night she arrived at his house. Nicholas carefully picked it up, inspecting it. Then his fingers found something. A seam, carefully stitched. He pulled. A small hidden pocket opened. Inside was a tiny USB drive. Nicholas's breath caught. This was what Bella had been protecting. The proof she had risked everything for. The reason Vaughn had taken her. A noise outside made him freeze. Footsteps. Nicholas immediately backed into the shadows. Gun raised. A figure moved past the storage unit. Silent. Careful. Then another. Vaughn's men. Nicholas's mind raced. They knew he was here. He couldn't let them take the USB. Couldn't let them find him. The storage unit had no back exit. He was trapped. He exhaled sharply. He needed a distraction. His eyes flickered to a set of metal shelving near the door, stacked high with old boxes. He moved quickly, knocking it over with a loud crash. The moment it hit the ground, he sprinted out, taking cover behind another unit as Vaughn's men rushed toward the noise. Gunfire erupted. Nicholas gritted his teeth. He fired twice, taking down one of the men, then ran toward the back of the facility. His car was parked 2 blocks away. If he could just. A sharp pain exploded across his shoulder. A bullet. Nicholas stumbled, gripping his arm. More footsteps. Too many. He had no choice. Clutching the USB tightly in his good hand, he ran. Snow crunched under his feet as he made his way toward the road. His vision blurred slightly from the pain, but he pushed forward. Finally, he reached his car. He threw himself inside and gunned the engine. In the rearview mirror, Vaughn's men were already running after him. But he was faster. As he sped down the darkened road, his hands shook around the wheel. He had the evidence, but Bella was still missing. And now, Vaughn knew he was involved. This wasn't just about finding Bella anymore. This was war. The enemy in the shadows. Nicholas Calloway gritted his teeth as pain shot through his shoulder, the gunshot wound burning like fire. The cold night air did little to numb it. His car sped down the deserted highway. The USB drive clutched tightly in his uninjured hand. This was what Bella had been protecting. And now, Vaughn's men knew that he had it. He checked the rearview mirror. Headlights. They were following him. Nicholas tightened his grip on the wheel, forcing his breathing to slow. He had to think. Vaughn wouldn't just send men after him. He'd send a message. This was only the beginning. A sharp turn loomed ahead. Without hesitation, Nicholas swerved off the road, cutting across an empty field. His tires skidded, mud and snow spraying behind him as his car jolted violently over uneven terrain. The headlights behind him hesitated. The driver wasn't confident enough to follow. Good. Nicholas gunned the accelerator, reaching a back road that cut through an abandoned industrial district. The engine roared as he pushed the car faster, dodging debris and potholes. By the time he reached the city outskirts, the headlights had disappeared. For now. But they would be back. Nicholas exhaled, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. Bella's daughters, Leah and Lainey, were depending on him. And Bella, if she was still alive, she needed him too. He had one job now: take down Garrett Vaughn before Vaughn took everything from him. The code hidden in the USB. Nicholas parked in an underground garage and killed the engine. His shoulder throbbed, but he ignored it. He had more pressing concerns. Pulling out his phone, he made one call. "Jack," he said the moment the line connected. "I have something." Jack sighed. "You sound like hell. Did you get shot?" Nicholas ignored the question. "Meet me at my office. Now." Jack muttered a curse but didn't argue. "On my way." Nicholas didn't waste time. He exited the car, clutching the USB tightly as he made his way to the private elevator of his corporate building. His office was on the top floor, a fortress of security and technology. If there was anywhere safe to analyze this USB, it was here. The elevator doors slid open, and Nicholas strode into the dimly lit office, his mind racing. Bella had hidden something inside this USB, something Vaughn was willing to kill for. Nicholas plugged the drive into his encrypted system, watching as the files loaded. Lines of code filled the screen. But one document stood out: a spreadsheet. Bank accounts, offshore transactions, names. Nicholas's breath caught. These weren't just any bank accounts. They belonged to politicians, corporate leaders, and law enforcement officials. Vaughn wasn't just running a criminal empire. He was protecting it with people in power. The full weight of what Bella had uncovered hit Nicholas like a freight train. This evidence could destroy Vaughn, which meant it was also the reason Bella had vanished. A soft chime signaled Jack's arrival. Nicholas turned as his old friend stepped in, a dark expression on his face. "You look like hell," Jack muttered. Nicholas ignored him. "Look at this." He motioned to the screen. Jack moved closer, eyes scanning the files. A low whistle escaped his lips. "This is bad." "It's worse than bad," Nicholas said. "This is the reason Bella was taken. Vaughn couldn't afford to let this information go public." Jack leaned over the desk, studying the offshore transactions. "This isn't just money laundering. Vaughn's paying off law enforcement. Look, this name, Lieutenant Grayson. He's the same cop who dismissed Bella's missing person report." Nicholas's stomach twisted. Vaughn had inside men everywhere. No wonder Bella hadn't been able to go to the police. Jack pointed to another name. "And this one, Senator O'Rourke. He's been pushing anti-corruption laws. Vaughn must be paying him off to control legislation." Nicholas's mind raced. "If we can leak this..." Jack cut him off. "No. If we leak this, Vaughn's people will bury it before it reaches the public. They'll bury us." Nicholas's jaw clenched. "Then what do we do?" Jack hesitated. "We don't go public. We go to war." Nicholas exhaled. "And how do you propose we do that?" Jack tapped the screen. "There's one name here that doesn't make sense." Nicholas followed his gaze. A single account. One that didn't belong to a politician or businessman. It was under Bella Thompson. Nicholas's pulse quickened. "That doesn't make sense. Bella had nothing. Jack frowned. Unless Vaughn set it up. Maybe it was a trap. Maybe it's leverage. Nicholas's grip tightened on the desk. Or maybe it was a clue. If Bella knew she was being hunted, she wouldn't leave her daughters without a safety net. She had planned ahead. Nicholas scrolled through the transactions. Then he saw it. A single transfer. To a rental property. Jack leaned closer. That's not an offshore account. Nicholas's heartbeat pounded. No, it's an address. Bella had left a trail. And Nicholas was going to follow it. A trap waiting to spring. The address led Nicholas and Jack to an old warehouse district. The property in question was a small run-down building on the edge of the river, far from prying eyes. Nicholas parked a few blocks away, his muscles tense. If Bella left something here, Jack said, Vaughn already knows about it. Nicholas nodded. That's why we move fast. They approached the building cautiously. The front door was locked, but Nicholas picked it in seconds. The interior was dark, abandoned, the air heavy with dust and oil. Jack flicked on a flashlight. What are we looking for? Nicholas scanned the room. If Bella had wanted someone to find this place, she would have left a clue. Then he saw it. A scrap of fabric caught in the metal door of an old storage room. Nicholas reached for it, heart pounding. It was from a dress. Bella's dress. He pushed open the door. And his world shattered. The message in blood. Inside the storage room was a chair. Ropes lay loose around it, as if someone had been tied up and then removed. But that wasn't the worst part. On the wall, written in what Nicholas was certain was blood, were 3 words. Too late, Nicholas. Jack cursed under his breath. Damn it. Nicholas's chest tightened. Bella had been here, and Vaughn wanted him to know he had her. Jack exhaled sharply. This isn't just about silencing Bella. Vaughn's playing with you. He wants you to come after him. Nicholas clenched his fists. Then I will. Jack studied the message. If Vaughn left this behind, he has to be nearby. He's watching you, Calloway. Nicholas didn't care. He wasn't backing down. He pulled out his phone, dialing a secure number. A voice on the other end answered. Calloway. Nicholas's voice was sharp, deadly. Get me everything on Garrett Vaughn's private properties. We're ending this. Jack shook his head. You're walking into a death trap. Nicholas's gaze was cold. No, I'm walking into his nightmare. A deadly gambit. Nicholas Calloway stood in the dimly lit warehouse, staring at the bloodied message scrawled on the wall. Too late, Nicholas. Vaughn was taunting him, daring him to make a move. Jack cursed under his breath. This is bad. Nicholas didn't respond. His fingers clenched at his sides, the throbbing pain in his injured shoulder now a distant memory compared to the fire burning in his chest. Bella had been here, which meant she was still alive. For now. Jack ran a hand through his graying hair. Calloway, listen to me. Vaughn knows you're coming. He wouldn't leave a message like this unless he was setting a trap. Nicholas turned to him, his gaze steely. Then we walk into it. Jack sighed. You want to get yourself killed, be my guest. But those 2 girls you left at your house, they still need you. Bella needs you, so let's not go charging in without a plan. Nicholas exhaled sharply, forcing himself to think. Vaughn has safe houses, private locations. We find those. We find Bella. Jack nodded. I made a few calls while you were getting shot at. Vaughn has a primary location, a private estate outside the city. But he also has a second property, a black psych facility he uses when he needs someone to disappear. Nicholas's jaw clenched. Where? Jack hesitated before handing him a slip of paper. Old processing plant. East side of the docks. No one goes in or out unless Vaughn allows it. Nicholas studied the address. If Bella was alive, she was there. But breaking into one of Vaughn's strongholds wasn't going to be easy. How many men does he keep there? Nicholas asked. Jack exhaled. 12 at least, maybe more. Nicholas glanced at the blood-stained wall one last time, his voice eerily calm. Then we bring 20. Gathering the wolves. Nicholas Calloway wasn't just a businessman. He had built his empire from the ground up. And to do that, he had made connections, dangerous ones. This was the part of him most people never saw. The part that didn't sit in boardrooms or negotiate contracts. The part that took what was his. An hour later, Nicholas and Jack sat in a private club, one where the city's most dangerous men owed Nicholas favors. A large man with a scared face leaned forward. "So let me get this straight. You want me to pull my crew off our usual work, arm them to the teeth, and break into Vaughn's private black site?" Nicholas met his gaze without flinching. "Yes." The man chuckled. "You realize that's suicide, right?" Nicholas leaned forward, placing a thick envelope of cash on the table. "Then consider it a very profitable suicide." The man glanced at the money, then at Nicholas. "What's in it for you?" Nicholas's expression darkened. "A woman." The scared man smirked. "This about revenge, Calloway?" Nicholas's voice was quiet, deadly. "It's about ending Vaughn. Permanently." A slow grin spread across the man's face. He glanced at his crew, hardened men who had done worse things for less money. Then he nodded. "We're in." The storm before the war. Back at Nicholas's estate, Leah and Laney were curled up in blankets, sipping hot chocolate under Miss Wilkins's watchful eye. When Nicholas walked in, Leah immediately ran to him, grabbing his sleeve. "Did you find her?" Nicholas knelt down, looking into her hopeful eyes. "I know where she is," he said softly. Leah's fingers tightened on his jacket. "You're bringing her back, right?" Nicholas's throat tightened. "Yes." Leah nodded, as if that answer was good enough for her. But her small voice wavered when she asked, "Are you coming back too?" Nicholas inhaled sharply. "I promise." Leah searched his face for a long moment, then finally let go. Miss Wilkins, who had been watching quietly, stepped forward. "Sir, be careful." Nicholas didn't respond, because there was no careful way to do what he was about to do. There was only winning, or dying. The docks, Vaughn's fortress. The night air was thick with salt and gasoline as Nicholas's team gathered near the edge of Vaughn's hidden facility. The old processing plant loomed ahead, its rusted metal walls lined with security cameras and armed guards. Jack crouched beside Nicholas, eyes scanning the perimeter. "Security's tight. Vaughn isn't taking chances." Nicholas pulled his gun from his holster, checking the magazine. "Neither am I." Scarface, Nicholas's hired muscle, tapped his earpiece. "We got eyes on the front and back entrances. There's a side access door, but it's locked down tight." Nicholas considered his options. "We go silent until we don't have to." Scarface grinned. "I like the way you think." Nicholas exhaled. This was it. He looked up at the dark building, knowing Bella was somewhere inside. And he was getting her out, one way or another. The first shot, the first silenced gunshot, dropped a guard near the side entrance. Nicholas and his men moved fast, slipping through the shadows. Inside, the air was stale. The plant had been abandoned for years, but Vaughn had turned it into something else, a private prison. Jack led them down a narrow hallway, his pistol raised. "Security hub should be this way." Nicholas nodded, signaling to Scarface. The big man kicked open a nearby door, silencing the guards inside before they could react. A computer terminal sat in the corner. Jack quickly plugged in a drive, hacking into the security feeds. "I've got eyes." Nicholas stepped closer. "Where is she?" Jack pulled up camera feeds. A small concrete room. "Bella." Nicholas's chest tightened. She was slumped against the wall, her hands tied, her face bruised. Alive, but barely. Nicholas's grip on his gun tightened. "Where?" Jack pointed. "Basement. South wing." Scarface cracked his knuckles. "Then let's go." The final confrontation. The moment Nicholas kicked open the door to the basement, all hell broke loose. Gunfire erupted. Vaughn's men fired from behind crates, shouting orders. Nicholas moved fast, dropping 2 guards before they could react. Scarface and his team returned fire, bullets ricocheting off metal beams. Through the chaos, Nicholas pushed forward. His shoulder screamed in pain, but he ignored it. Then, a voice. Calloway. Nicholas froze. Garrett Vaughn stood across the room, a gun pressed against Bella's temple. She was on her knees, blood dripping from her split lip. Vaughn smirked. "You really are predictable." Nicholas aimed his gun. "Let her go." Vaughn laughed. "And why would I do that?" Nicholas exhaled. "Because I have this." He pulled the USB drive from his pocket. Vaughn's smirk faltered. Nicholas stepped forward. "Let her go, or I burn you to the ground. Every account, every dirty secret." Vaughn's grip on Bella tightened. "You think you're the first person to try to take me down." Nicholas's expression didn't change. "No." He tossed the USB toward Vaughn. Vaughn smirked until he caught it. The moment his hands left Bella's head, Nicholas fired. A single shot. Vaughn's body jerked. He staggered, blood blossoming across his chest. Bella gasped, falling forward. Nicholas ran to her, pulling her into his arms. Vaughn choked on his own breath, his body collapsing. It was over. Finally, over. Nicholas clutched Bella tightly, whispering, "I got you." Bella's fingers gripped his jacket weakly. "You came for me." Nicholas exhaled shakily. Always. And for the first time in years. He meant it. The reckoning. Nicholas Calloway held Bella in his arms, her body weak, trembling against his. Blood from her injuries smeared against his shirt, but he didn't care. She was alive. The gun in his hand was still warm from the shot that had ended Garrett Vaughn's reign. The man who had orchestrated years of suffering now lay crumpled on the cold concrete floor, gasping his last breath. Bella's fingers gripped his coat weakly. "The girls," she croaked, barely able to form the words. Nicholas tightened his arms around her. "They're safe." Her body sagged in relief, but he could see the pain in her eyes, the weight of years spent running, fighting, and losing. She had fought so hard for so long. And now, finally, she didn't have to fight alone. Jack's voice crackled over the radio. "We need to go. Now. Vaughn's remaining men are regrouping outside." Nicholas looked up, his mind snapping back to reality. This wasn't over yet. If they didn't get out now, they'd be walking into another battle. Scarface jogged over, reloading his rifle. "We've got incoming." 3 SUVs just pulled up, blackout tinted. They're either pissed or desperate. Nicholas ground his teeth. Vaughn might have been dead, but his operation wasn't. And whoever was coming next, they were here to clean up loose ends. Nicholas glanced down at Bella. She was one of those loose ends. Not today. Nicholas shifted Bella's weight against him. "Get her out of here," he ordered Scarface. "Jack, give us an exit." Jack's fingers flew over the hacked security system. "There's a service tunnel in the back. Should lead out toward the docks." Scarface nodded, hauling Bella into his arms without hesitation. "I got her." Nicholas turned toward Vaughn's body one last time. The man had fought himself untouchable. He had played with lives like a god. The price of redemption. The warehouse smelled of blood, gunpowder, and rust. Vaughn lay crumpled on the cold concrete floor, his once arrogant smirk frozen in shock as crimson spread across his expensive shirt. Nicholas Calloway barely spared him another glance. He had Bella in his arms, and that was all that mattered. She was weak, barely holding on to consciousness, her bruised face turned up toward him. Her dark hair was tangled, her lips cracked, but she was alive. And after all these years, after all the mistakes and betrayals, she still managed a soft half-laugh. "You look like hell," she murmured. Nicholas let out a breath that was half a laugh, half relief. "You should see yourself." Bella tried to sit up, but the effort made her wince. Her ribs were broken. He knew that much. His hands tightened on her. "Can you walk?" She exhaled. "I can try." Behind them, Jack and Scarface moved, securing the remaining guards and checking for any last threats. The gunfight was over, but Nicholas knew the real battle wasn't finished yet. Not by a long shot. Because Garrett Vaughn might be dead, but his empire wasn't. And someone else, someone higher up in the shadows, had been funding him all along. Nicholas slipped an arm under Bella's shoulders, helping her up. She winced, but didn't complain. "Where are the girls?" she whispered. Nicholas's chest tightened. "They're safe." Bella's entire body sagged with relief. Her fingers clutched at his jacket. "Then let's get out of here." Nicholas nodded, but first there was something he needed to do. A name that shouldn't exist. Jack pulled Nicholas aside as Scarface helped Bella outside. "We have a problem," Jack muttered, wiping blood off his face. "A big one." Nicholas exhaled sharply. "What now?" Jack glanced toward Vaughn's body. "Before he died, he muttered something." Nicholas stiffened. "What?" Jack hesitated. He said, "You think this ends with me?" Then he laughed. Nicholas's jaw clenched, because he was working for someone else. Jack nodded. "Yeah, and I think I know who." He pulled out a burner phone and handed it to Nicholas. This was found on Vaughn's desk. Nicholas took the phone, scrolling through the last messages Vaughn had sent before the ambush. There was only one name. Nicholas's blood ran cold. It was a name he knew, a name he had trusted. James Holloway, Nicholas's former mentor, the man who had helped build his empire, the man who had made him turn against Bella in the first place. Jack exhaled. "I did some digging. Holloway has been pulling the strings for years. Vaughn wasn't the mastermind. He was just a pawn. Holloway used him to do his dirty work. And when Vaughn got sloppy, Holloway set him up to die." Nicholas's fingers curled around the phone. "And now he's going to come after me." Jack nodded grimly. "Not just you. Bella. The twins. Anyone you care about." Nicholas closed his eyes. He had been so focused on Vaughn, on taking one enemy off the board, that he hadn't even seen the bigger game. Holloway had been controlling everything. And now that Nicholas knew the truth, he was next. The final refuge. Nicholas drove Bella away from the docks, his mind racing with possibilities. Holloway wouldn't wait long before making his move. He needed to get Bella and the twins somewhere safe. For now, the safe house Jack had secured was a quiet, secluded cabin deep in the mountains. It wasn't much, just a simple wooden house with an old fireplace and a few rooms. But it was off the grid. Nicholas carried Bella inside, ignoring her weak protests that she could walk. Miss Wilkins was already waiting, her eyes red-rimmed with worry. She gasped when she saw Bella. "Oh, my dear." Bella managed a weak smile. "I've had worse." Miss Wilkins ushered Nicholas toward the small bedroom. "Get her in bed. I'll fetch some warm water and bandages." Nicholas gently lowered Bella onto the mattress. Her breathing was shallow, her eyelids fluttering. She was exhausted. Nicholas brushed a stray lock of hair from her face. "Rest." Bella's fingers curled weakly around his wrist. "Nicholas." His breath caught. It had been years since she had said his name like that. He swallowed hard. "Yeah." She forced her eyes open, searching his face. "You saved me." Nicholas exhaled sharply. "Not yet." Her grip on his wrist tightened. "You still blame yourself," she murmured. "For before." Nicholas said nothing. Bella studied him. "You didn't know, Nicholas. You thought I betrayed you." His jaw clenched. "And I threw you away." She sighed, her voice softer now. "I forgave you a long time ago." Nicholas looked away. He hadn't forgiven himself. After a moment, Bella's hand slipped from his wrist, her body finally giving in to exhaustion. Nicholas sat there for a long time, watching her breathe. Then he stood and walked into the other room. Jack was waiting by the window, watching the snowfall. "We can't stay here long," he said without turning. Nicholas nodded. "I know." Jack finally faced him. "So what's the plan?" Nicholas exhaled. "We end this. For good." Jack raised an eyebrow. "You saying what I think you're saying?" Nicholas's voice was steel. "Holloway dies." Jack let out a low whistle. "You sure about that? This isn't Vaughn. Holloway has power. Connections." Nicholas's eyes were cold. "So do I." Jack nodded slowly. "Then let's get to work." The call that changed everything. As Nicholas sat down, preparing to plan his next move, his phone rang. A blocked number. Nicholas answered, and the voice on the other end made his blood turn to ice. "Hello, Nicholas." "James Holloway." Nicholas's grip on the phone tightened. "Holloway." A smooth chuckle. "I was wondering when you'd figure it out." Nicholas didn't waste time. "Where's the rest of Vaughn's evidence?" Holloway sighed. "Ah, Nicholas, always so predictable. You think this is about evidence?" He let out a small laugh. "No, my boy. This is about you." Nicholas's eyes darkened. "If you come for me, I will end you." Silence. Then Holloway's voice dropped into a deadly whisper. "Oh, Nicholas, I'm not coming for you." Nicholas's stomach dropped. "No. No. You should have taken my offer when you had the chance," Holloway continued. "But now, well..." Nicholas's body went cold, because in the background of the call, he could hear children crying. Leah, Lainey, Holloway had them. Nicholas's blood boiled. His voice was a deadly growl. "If you hurt them, I will tear your world apart." Holloway laughed. "Then come get them, Nicholas. Let's see if you can finally finish what you started." The line went dead. Nicholas's hands shook with rage. Jack was already on his feet. "What happened?" Nicholas's gaze burned with fury. "They took the girls." Jack's eyes widened. Nicholas grabbed his gun, his voice deadly. "Get the car." Holloway had made one fatal mistake. He thought Nicholas Calloway was still a businessman. But tonight, Nicholas was going to be the monster Holloway had created, and he wasn't leaving without his family.